You should be on.
I am. Hello.
Hey, Ron, how are you?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm great.
Okay, cool. I'm using two microphones because I realized that my little webcam, it sounds so bad. So now I have one plugged into the computer and then one recording externally. This is the complete madness I'm living with.
Wow. Well, do you have to hold the other mic or do you have a stand for it?
I should have a stand for it, but I'm just gonna wing it today.
Okay.
How are you? How are you doing?
Pretty good. My wife just helped me set this up. I can't do these. I'm useless with anything technical. So
I totally get it. I absolutely hate Zoom. I'm so sick of it. But I keep saying this, but I think we're recording. We're live. We're going. But
okay.
I think I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I see it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I see it too. Yeah, I mean, this can't go on forever, and I think, the vaccines are on the way, and it just, it's just not normal.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's amazing. So, yeah, let's start off. How was your Valentine's Day? Did you do anything fun? What'd you do?
Yeah, we had a kind of a romantic dinner. There's a couple friends here that we've bubbled with, that they're kind of almost like our extended family. And so we had a nice couples dinner, and but yeah, it wasn't anything too, well, we went for a walk. That's right. We went through a nice sort of nature walk that day. My wife reminded me. Yeah, it was good. I'm on a dry February this month,
Right. Yeah, totally.
So, so there wasn't any wine or anything like that, but it was nice, and got some chocolates, all the usual stuff.
Is that something you do periodically, going through dry months, or?
I have. It's been a while. I mean, since COVID started, I think many of us have drinking more just out of boredom,
Right.
But even then, I was mostly having drinks on the weekend. But I just thought, I was having some mystery pains, and I thought I would just take February off and see how I do, But it's the shortest month of the year, right? So it's kind of like, I thought, okay, that should be. It's not that hard. I'm pretty good at sticking to a routine. I'm sort of OCD, and so I can focus. And I've done cleanses and things like that before too, where I wasn't allowed to have even coffee. So.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty lucky not to develop I haven't drank coffee since, I don't know, I was in junior high or something. And alcohol has always been a weird thing for me. I feel like it's never made my playing any better. So I've just eliminated it from my live shows completely. How do you feel with that? Do you have a couple drinks before you play?
I like to have, I like to have some wine before I go on stage, only because it's probably all in my head, but I feel makes me feel more or less maybe self-conscious or something, or just like courage juice or whatever. But yeah, I can function pretty well actually with it, but yeah, I know it's not I don't recommend it, but it's just, especially with my band, we used to, a lot of them have kind of almost stopped drinking completely, but we used to, like a lot of bands, we drink on the way to the gig,
right.
before the gig, during the gig, so that's sort of, we've curbed that a little bit. But no, I do love having wine in the dressing room and having a few glasses before I go on, and just makes me feel a little more, charming or something.
Totally. So a lot of the videos I've seen online, it's kind of just been you playing by yourself. And you said you have a band. How long have you been playing with the full band? Have you always been playing with the full band? I'm just missing these videos.
Yeah. Well, my band, I've had a lot of the same guys playing with me for years. Don Kerr, who's my drummer, we worked together as Couriers in '87, and he played. He did pretty much all my tours. There was a few years where he missed because he had some kids, and so we had different drummers, and they were fine, but it was never the same. So I've got we're kind of like a merry band of guys that I can call. But actually, in the last couple of years, it's been harder. I mean, I never make money when I tour.
Right.
I lose money, but
I know that very well.
I love playing with the band. It was just more fun for me. Like this year, before COVID struck, I was about to set off on a world solo tour, and I wasn't, at first I wasn't that thrilled about it because I really do love playing with the band, but then I got into it in a sort of theatrical way. My wife was building a set with a picket fence and a tree, and I was going to do this kind of one-man show. Which I do. I still hope I can do that tour, like eventually. But my favorite thing in the whole world is playing with my band, because we just have so much fun. So these guys have been with me for a long time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Have you been hearing any whispers about, possibly rebooking your shows? Like,
yeah, I've been hearing some whispers. All my UK shows, for example, they're moving to the spring of 2022.
Oh, okay, 2022.
And I've heard similar reports about my Canadian tour. But again, I think it's just a lot of wishful thinking.
Right.
It's happening. It's happening to everybody. I figure when all the big stars like Taylor Swift and when they're able to do their enormous shows, then that'll be fine for me to do my shows,
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. If we can get like a 300 cap room, I still think, I don't know, once again, wishful thinking, but I still think it's going to be like half capacity rooms, still with the mask. And, my main joke is I was already playing the half capacity room. So it's the same. It's already the same for me. And yeah.
Well, I don't know where are you calling from?
I'm from I live in Santa Barbara, California.
Oh, Santa Barbara. Yeah, because we were, I don't know what the restrictions are down there, but where I live, last year we were sort of orange restriction.
Oh, okay.
Which from October to December, you were allowed to have 50 people inside.
Oh, wow.
If protocols were in place. And so I did a residency gig in my hometown here twice a month at this beautiful venue called Revival, for 50 people. And once people came in, it was also a restaurant. So once people came in and were at their tables, they could take their masks off and have dinner. And I was playing behind a glass, on stage, a big kind of window.
Yeah.
And with a piano and that. But I did, so I played about 8 shows from fall till the current lockdown. And it really felt, aside from the fact we couldn't have the place only holds about 150 anyway.
Right.
But still, it was all spaced out correctly and people could have a normal night out because they didn't have their masks on when they're at the table. And because I really have not been interested in doing these virtual gigs.
Right.
I just not interested at all. I'm fine to just play around the house until, so it was really good for me to be able to play in front of real people. And also it was good for them to have some entertainment and also a normal night out. So,
yeah,
and I'm hoping, we can do that again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a little taste of normalcy, just to like, this feels kind of. Yeah. Was it weird playing with the big plexiglass in front of you? I guess drummers do that all the time. Like,
it was weird at first. But it was actually the way they did it was nice. It looked like I was almost in a painting or something because it was this really clear glass with a frame around it, and so and people got used to it pretty fast. But yeah, it was a bit odd. I don't really like it. I would wish I could just, but I think, eventually we'll have to go back to the way it was because it's just, it's cost prohibitive, to tour, especially to travel, to play for half capacity, not even like less than half capacity, And
I know.
So for me, for the time being, I'm happy to do this residency gig because it makes me feel useful,
Right.
And it gave me something to look forward to. And so, so I think we're actually back at orange level now after the lockdown. So I think next month we can start doing these little shows again.
That's awesome. Is that kind of how you started playing by yourself, or did you originally start off with a band?
Yeah, I've always played a lot of solo shows. I started playing cover tunes in my local hometown of St. Catharines, and just at this bar called the Lions Tavern, I would play 3 nights a week. And I was packing them in for a long time. I was really young. I was like 17.
Oh, wow.
And for about 4 years, I played the Lions Tavern on and off. And it was a good education. But when I started writing songs, I moved to Toronto. And then, I did play solo in Toronto, but I sort of put together a band pretty quickly. But even over the years, since I've been making records, sometimes I've opened for people solo on tour, or I've had to do solo tours. Like, let's say I would tour Germany solo in order to pay for having my band somewhere else or something like that.
Right.
So I'm fine playing solo. Like, again, it's not my most favorite thing, but I know I can do it.
Right.
And if the venue's right, and they have a nice, as you get older, there's the little things that really make it sweet. If the dressing room's nice, if it's a listening room. I don't want to play a bar solo, I want to play a theater or something. So I've got more fussy in my old age and more particular. So, but with a band, you can play a club one night, a theater one night, and it's just always fun.
Right. Was that something that ever bothered you when you were younger, people talking while you're playing,
Yeah. I mean, especially, when I was starting out in the bars, that sort of it was a given, it's a noisy bar, people are drinking and smoking.
Right.
And that was the challenge, was to get their attention, so you play a song they all want to hear, and, but yeah, a lot of times, in early 90s, pretty much all I did was open for people. And sometimes if I was opening for somebody in a bar, yeah, you'd hear people just talking through your whole set, and that annoyed me.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the people I opened up for were playing theaters or amphitheaters and stuff. And so, there wasn't talking really, or at least I couldn't hear it.
Like on that level, there's like an understanding, like the artist is on stage, I'm just going to sit here and be quiet. Like, but at a bar, it's like, sometimes I think the audience feels like, oh, this is just background, or it's an inconvenience almost to what I'm here to do, which is to drink.
Yeah, and in a bar, like, it's also, you're playing and you're seeing people shuffling around too, because they're getting up back to get a drink or going to the bathroom or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's, I don't know. I mean, it's, but part of that opening up for people is, I think a lot of people have to start that way, and it's a good learning process, to go through that and have a noisy crowd. Sometimes you have hecklers even, and you have to kind of deal with that. So, but I've been doing it so long now. Like, I went on tour with the Bare Naked Ladies.
Oh, cool.
A couple years ago. They're friends of mine. I really didn't want to do it because I'm at an age where I don't like to open for people that much. But one of my good friends is in that band. So I thought, well, it'll be fun to go hang out with him.
Yeah.
But it was hard because my music is not really what their audience is into. So I felt, and they were playing a lot of big, like sort of big bars, and stuff.
Right.
And so it was like a uphill battle trying to get anyone's attention. I thought I didn't really go over very well, so it was a bit discouraging.
I feel like they have a pretty vague audience, though. It's like it could be almost any age, any person who likes any type of music. Like, so I feel like maybe you would capture some fans, but I definitely have done tours like that where I stick out. And it's just like, you're just at the merch booth and no one's coming to talk to you. And it's just like, you can't blame them because it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's humbling when you open for people, even if you feel you had a bad night, there's ultimately someone will come up to you and say, wow, that was really great or something, one person, and that could make your day.
I definitely, Yeah. I was gonna say, I definitely lived in the first few years of starting this band, in 2010, 11, I always lived for that one guy who was at the empty bar in LA. And he's like, you guys are great. Yeah. You should be opening for so-and-so. And it's like, yeah, how do I do that? How do I get from playing the bar to the opening slot?
Yeah, or the people that will say, oh, man, they should be opening for you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but if I could fill this room, maybe they would be opening for me. But nobody knows who I am. So I don't know. I opened up. I mean, for years, I was just crisscrossing the world on an endless opening with
right.
Sarah McLachlan, John Hyatt, Tori Amos. I did the Finn Brothers, Elvis Costello. I mean, it was just,
right.
And some I was more suited for, it was more of a, like, yeah, this works and their audience gets me and this and that. Sometimes I was like, what am I doing here? I have no hope to win over, the Lilith Fair crowd or whatever it is.
Right. Totally.
So it was, but you go out there and do your job. And the thing about touring on one of those opening slots when you're playing for someone very successful is you really get to see how the other half live, the
right.
catering and all that kind of stuff, right?
Totally.
Are you still there? I think your screen froze.
Can you see me?
There.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm still here. Absolutely. Is that like a motivating factor for you, or do you think, I can't play these? I don't know if I'd ever beat this like arena band or this bowl kind of band?
Well, the thing is, the one tour that comes to mind is we did a couple tours with Coldplay,
right?
And with my band opening up. And the very first tour we did, they were still playing bars and still playing small theaters. And they were really nice guys, and we felt like it was a good fit. We felt we could go out and win people over. But by the second tour, it's like almost overnight they kept getting bigger and bigger. And so all of a sudden we're playing Madison Square and the Hollywood Bowl, and now we're not the only opening act. We're like the second opening act. Nobody wants to hear the second opening act, right? They're run out of patience by then. I remember playing somewhere on tour, and just people, they just can't wait for Coldplay,
Right.
And so it wouldn't matter how good we were. So, but my band loved that tour because, again, there was all this amazing catering backstage.
Right.
And Coldplay sometimes would let us use their tour bus because they were on a private jet or something like this. Awesome. So, but I personally didn't enjoy it. The bigger they got, the harder it was for me, because I just felt a bit, demoralized by it. So, so there sort of came a time when I told my managers that I just don't really, unless it's someone like Nick Lowe or someone like that, that I really have a connection with, I really don't want to open for people. I'd rather play for a smaller audience that's really into me, as opposed to trying to win people over. Because, I've got, by that point I had about 10 albums out. I wasn't really interested in trying to win people over.
Yeah, totally. Is this the kind of conversation that gets like tiresome after a while? Because I was listening to a few interviews with you, and everyone wants to talk about like this struggle of being the opening musician, all this stuff. Is this kind of stuff I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like, this is like my brand now that I'm like, I get tired of it. People tell me, I get messages all the time on Instagram. Oh, you should be more famous right now. You should do. I'm like, okay, tell your friends about me. I don't know what to say. Like,
I know it's like they mean well,
Right.
They go, why aren't you doing this and that? But I don't know. I never felt, I think it's more of a problem. Other people, they worry about it. I don't worry about it,
right?
Because I feel mostly lucky that my dream came true, which was to get in the door to this place where I'm making records and I'm doing all those things, doing interviews or whatever. Yeah. I was 30 when I got signed, which is already kind of old. Yeah. So that was, so it was amazing for me that it happened, because it was starting to look like it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So I'm just really grateful. I have an audience, I have a career, and it's just, so all that stuff, I never thought my music really would work in a hockey arena or anything like that anyway. I mean, if I could play venues like Massey Hall all the time, I'd be really happy.
So I just turned 30. I'm turning 31. I'm not necessarily signed to a big label, and it's starting to feel like it's not going to happen for me. What advice do you have for me? And now I'm turning to you as my therapist, as my light to the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I knew that it wasn't going to happen if I gave up, So,
right, yeah.
There was a lot of evidence pointing towards giving up at that point. I remember I was a courier, and people in my own family were telling me, hey, maybe you should get a steady job, like get a job for the post office or something, because I wasn't making any money. But I don't know. I I had this foolish notion in my head that it was meant to be, and I mean, I was born the same day as Elvis Presley and all this stuff, all these crazy things you kind of hold on to. And, and also I thought and I believed in myself. I believed in the songs I was writing, and I was gathering my own evidence when I'd go to a club and I could see that it was connecting with people. And so I just hung in there, and it happened. And I know that if I had maybe taken a secure job, or that maybe I would have gotten lazy and it wouldn't have happened. So the thing is, you have to think about the alternative of a life without doing it.
Right.
Which is no life, really. It's not, you even if you had to work some job or whatever, it's like, you work so you can have this other thing that you want to do,
Right.
So I just got lucky. I got signed. And since 93, I've been able just to do music. And, so, I mean, sometimes I think, oh, I wish I would have got signed earlier or something. But I think what's the expression? God is always on time or something.
Right.
I don't know what it is, right? So, yeah.
Do you think you were better prepared to handle the industry side of things because you were older?
Yeah, I do. Also, I was more fully formed in my music too.
Right.
Because I was writing a lot of crappy songs in my early 20s that probably would have ended up on records that I would be embarrassed about by now.
Right.
So, but I was still very naive, I was very naive. And I think coming from Canada and getting signed to a label in Los Angeles, like the biggest label at the time was Interscope.
Right.
I think they saw me as kind of this dumb kid from Canada. And I also always looked really young at the time. Like I was in my 30s, but I looked like I was 17 or something. Totally. So I think they kind of pushed me around a bit. They tried to push me around. They didn't want my first album to come out. They wanted me to start over. And I had to fight them, put my foot down many times. And I actually got advice one night there was a guy named Bob Newirth, who was a friend of Bob Dylan's,
Right.
He was in the Rolling Thunder and all that. And I had a phone call with Bob Newirth one night that T-Bone Burnett set up for me. And he'd never heard of me before. And it was a kind of an awkward conversation because I was like, yeah, T-Bone Burnett said I should talk to you or something, But anyway, he told me, listen, it's your name on the record. And I mean, obvious things really, but things I guess I needed to be told. And he would say, the label doesn't care about you,
Right.
They like you now, they want to succeed. Right. But ultimately, if you do everything they want you to do, it still may not do well. And then you're stuck with a record that you don't believe in, and it still didn't do well, and then they drop you,
Right.
So he said, you really have to fight for yourself and stick up for yourself. And that's what I did. And after there was a lot of fights over my first album. And then after that, they sort of left me alone, which was good and bad, because sometimes you wanted their input and their help. And then they just sort of saw me as, he's this difficult guy or something.
Totally.
Which I don't think I was, but anyway.
I think that's like the entertainment industry kiss of death if they label you as difficult. That's something I always hear. It's just like,
yeah.
Because then,
I mean, some people like to have a reputation like that, they want, but I never did. I was just trying to politely, as a Canadian, we're supposed to be so polite up here. I was just trying to not offend anyone and just say, hey, look, I'm really proud of this record. I don't want to change it. I don't want to redo it. And the thing for me, and this is kind of an old story too that always comes up, but my album came out in 95 and it did very poorly. Like nobody bought it. The label wasn't working it. And so in December of 95 is when Elvis Costello held it up on a magazine cover.
Right.
Changed my whole life, because at that point the label was preparing to drop me. And I was thinking my career was over and it hadn't even begun yet. Yeah. So when Elvis did that, all of a sudden there was some intelligent person at the label said, hey, maybe we got to work this album over in Europe, because at that point it was only in Canada and America. And that's where I found my audience, in the UK, Australia, all these places. And then it would eventually came back to North America. So it was very vindicating, to
Absolutely.
Right. So
To find your people.
yeah.
Okay, so this is something that always gets lost, like something like even we just talked about right now, where it's like, yeah, I was just playing shows and then I got signed. But what's that middle part? Like, how did you get signed? Did you get did they come to your show? Like, did someone arrange an A&R person to come to your show? What?
Yeah. Well, in Toronto, I was playing the bars, and I was always trying to get record people to come see me play.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they would come see me play, and maybe there'd be 5 people in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And in Toronto, if it's not happening on Queen Street, the labels, they just think, well, this guy's not happening. Uh-huh. And so there wasn't a lot of interest for me. And so I'd made this cassette called Grand Opera Lane. And it was produced by a guy who was in a very big Canadian band called Blue Rodeo. Mm. And he himself shopped it to every label in Toronto, all the big labels. They all turned it down, every single one of them. And so as a last resort, he sent this cassette down to Geffen Records in Los Angeles. He knew a guy there, can't remember his name. And there was a guy named Ronnie Vance who was the head of publishing at Geffen. And he I think he only liked one song on it.
Right.
But he really liked it. And so the next thing I know, he's flying in with a bunch of big shots from Geffen to see me play in Toronto. And I had to scrounge around to get a venue. I didn't have a gig or anything. So we packed our friends in there and they came out to see me. But they weren't impressed. They thought, you're a good songwriter, but you don't have the look. You don't sing very well. Right. But so I remember they took me out for dinner after, and they were like, he said, hey, here's what we can do. We can offer you a publishing deal. And it was like a publishing deal for one song. They just wanted that one song. And at that point I had no other offers. So I was like, fine. And it was for hardly any money. I think they were offering me like 10 grand or something like this. And I was broke at the time. But I went for it, and I started the process of, I got a lawyer, and and then right at the moment they're about to sign me, Ronnie Vance gets fired from Geffen Records. Oh. So the whole thing fell through. And so at this point, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's never, I can't catch a break, And this is the interesting thing is a year later, out of the blue, I'm just still working my career job, and I get a phone call, and it's Ronnie Vance. He says, hey, I've just been signed at Interscope Records at the head of publishing, and I want to sign you. And he hadn't forgotten about me. It was amazing.
That's amazing.
And he signed me. It was a little bit more money, not a lot more money. And he told me up front, he goes, I probably won't be able to get you a record deal, but if you demo songs for me, I can shop them to people, maybe, who knows, Dionne Warwick or something. Right. I don't know. And it was the very first time I'd never been on an airplane before, and they flew me down to LA. I'm like 28 or something. And he started putting me in the studio with a guy named Peter Himmelman doing demos. So this has kind of got the ball rolling. Right. And nobody else at Interscope knew about me. Jimmy Iovine didn't know about me. And so we started playing my demos for tastemakers in LA, like producers and this and that, other artists. And he got some really good feedback. And this one guy, and I know this is kind of a long story, but I love it. But this one fellow in New York City named David Segerson, I think he's passed away since, but he was the head of Polydor Records. And it was kind of funny because David Segerson was also a songwriter at one point in his life. And he loved these demos I made. And so he asked Ronnie Vance, well, I want to meet this guy. Where is he? And I was playing in Toronto for like 2 people at some crappy venue. Yeah. And then he called me the night of that night and said, I need you in New York tomorrow morning. And I'd never been to New York before. Yeah. So they rushed the airline ticket for me. I get on a plane. I'm in New York. It's like 10 in the morning or something. We go to David Segerson's office. I play him 3 songs, and he says, would you like to sign with Polydor? Like, I almost cried. I couldn't believe someone was offering me a record deal. Right. But then because Ronnie worked for Interscope, he felt he obliged, to let Jimmy Iovine know about me. And Jimmy Iovine never heard of me before, but he called him from New York and said, "Hey, Jimmy, one of my writers has just been offered a deal with Polydor. Do you want to get in on this?" Or so the following weekend, I was flown to LA to perform for Jimmy Iovine in his office. So
wow.
So in the span of a week, I was in a sort of a bidding war, and ultimately, I felt a little pressure actually to go with Interscope because Ronnie Vance was in his awkward situation where my heart was with David Segerson because I felt he understood me even more than Jimmy Iovine did.
Right.
But Jimmy Iovine was, like I say, they were the biggest label at that time. And everything sort of pointed me to that. And they even flew my family. They took us to Disneyland. Like they really, back when labels had money, and they did the wine and dining thing. That impressed me. So I signed with Interscope. And it was originally an 8-album deal. And, I made 4 albums for Interscope, but the 4th album, they decided not to put out. So I took it to another label. So.
Do you think at the end of the day you made the right decision? Because Polydor was originally interested.
Yeah, I did make the right decision because I think it was he was hurt. His feelings were hurt when I didn't sign with Polydor. Right. But I think it was maybe only 3 months later he was fired from Polydor.
Oh.
So I could have been signed, and then the guy that likes me isn't there anymore.
Right.
So yeah, so it was a good decision. And also the thing that was amazing, again, it was kind of vindication, was no one in Canada knew about this. It was all happening. And next thing you know, Interscope puts out this press release about this new songwriter from Canada. And all the labels in Canada that had turned me down like twice were like, they did not see that coming. They're like, how did this happen? There's a lot of backpedaling going on. Oh, we always knew Ron was good or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they were short-sighted in Canada. They were thinking all about Queen Street. No one in LA cares about Queen Street.
Right.
So
is that a moment where you laugh at the local labels in Canada, or?
Well, I didn't want to laugh at them, but it did feel sweet for a while to think that all these people, and I knew, and some of them don't even remember, but I would get these rejection letters from some of them, and they knew. I mean, they didn't know that I knew who they were, right? And they were all backpedaling and saying all these nice things about me now, whereas sometimes they were not very nice in their letters, But yeah, I don't hold on to that kind of stuff.
Right.
But at the time, it felt good to feel wanted. And I've actually it's funny because Interscope at the time was distributed by Warner Brothers, but only for a short period, because then they switched over to Universal, which was sad because I was really getting on with the Warner people in Canada. So I went with Universal for a few albums, but then pretty much ever since I got off Interscope, I went back. I've been on Warner ever since. So they've been kind of like a family label. I know everybody there. Right. They seem to like, even though I don't sell a lot of records, they seem to like having me on the label. Hopefully they'll want to do another record because I've got some more songs. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if they said no too. But anyway, someone will want it.
Right, definitely. What was the audition like, and what was your first time in New York like?
Well, it was funny because again, I'm in New York and I get in a yellow cab and I'm going downtown, and it just felt like I was in a movie, a Woody Allen film or something. And then the next thing you know, I'm in my publisher's hotel room because we had a little huddle, And he goes, "You got any new songs?" And I just written 2 new songs before, that month before I went to New York. And so I played him. One song was called "There's a Rhythm," that was on my first album. Another song was called "In Place of You," that was on my first album. And he was blown away, like he was speechless. He already liked my songs, but there was a lot of songs he didn't like of mine as well. Right. But he felt maybe just since signing me, my songwriting had. And he goes, okay. And he told me, he was very, very hands-on. Like I couldn't play anyone, and I wasn't allowed to play anybody any songs that he hadn't approved for a while. And he said, when we go meet David, you're going to play him these 2 new songs and like some other song that I can't remember which one. And I did, and David was very friendly. A totally different vibe from Jimmy Iovine a week later, Jimmy Iovine's not a songwriter. He's kind of like a Joe Pesci character, you know. So they flew me to LA. And in David Segerson's office, it was just, he was in a desk, and I was sitting close to the desk. In Jimmy Iovine's office, he was at the end of a long table, you know, a long boardroom table with his financial guy. And I was down the other end. And I played him the exact same 3 songs. My publisher wasn't with me too, so I was more nervous meeting Jimmy. But he was like, it was kind of a similar outcome though, because after 3 songs, he's like, you know, son, you wanna make records for Interscope? You know, he's kind of talking like Joe Pesci.
Right.
He said I reminded him of Roy Orbison.
That's good.
Yeah, and when other people had said that too, you know, so I thought, oh, well, that's nice. And I think that whoever he was with probably didn't get me at all. But, you know, he didn't make those kind of decisions. He was just sort of the money guy. But so Jimmy Iovine, so I mean, he was nice, but again, he had this tough thing. He's also, I think, a New York or New Jersey guy or wherever he's from. And they put this big party on for me in Malibu at his house, which was insane mansion with all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, it was just so surreal, you know. But the thing is, go on.
Is that a feeling where you're like, oh, I don't belong? This isn't my world. Like, I don't think I belong here.
Well, I was so self-conscious, and I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know what my hair should do. And I just felt everyone was sizing me up and looking at me like, you know, Jimmy's lost his mind for signing me or something. That's where my head was going. And I was so naive too. And I was trying to make conversation with Jimmy because I knew that he produced Stevie Nicks, you know?
Right.
And I was asking him, I think they dated even, you know, and I'd asked him, so, you know, what's Stevie recording anymore? And he made some remark that I guess her voice was shot or something this. And I had said, oh, from smoking. And everyone at the table laughed their heads off, you know, because I guess he was referring to other things that hadn't even occurred to me. And he goes, that's what I like about you, Ron. You're whatever, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
But I definitely felt like awkward, and I'm awkward anyway, but in that situation, I just was like, I couldn't believe everything that was happening to me. And the thing is, Jimmy kind of washed his hands of me after me, Mitchell Froome went to his office with the finished record. And all Jimmy said was, he said, it sounded like Swordfish Trombones, you know, by Tom Waits, which it didn't sound anything like Swordfish Trombones. But I knew what he meant by that, because Mitchell and Chad were the type of producers. If somebody slammed the door, that made it on the record. It was, you know, it had a kind of a junkyard sort of thing about it. Mm-hmm. And then all he said was, he goes, well, the radio's not going to play this record, but put it out there, let the critics lift it up. And he really had nothing more to do with me after that record. I got passed over to the vice president, a guy named Tom Wally, who actually liked me, you know. We socialized sometimes. So I felt I had him in my corner. And I was actually happy that Jimmy really wasn't that involved.
Right.
You know? But yeah, you know, they did, like I say, I made 4 records for them, and all those records were expensive, you know. So back then when labels had money, I mean, and they were doing so well, I felt they could coast, you know, like off the record sales of Snoop Dogg or whoever it was.
Yeah.
So, which was true for a while, but then at a certain point when all the labels started merging and Napster and everything, all of a sudden they didn't care about having a cred artist anymore. You know, it used to be every label wanted to have a few cred artists because that would help bring in other people or something. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, but, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's I can't remember the exact name, but it's like Bill Clinton signed the 97 act where, and then all these companies just started buying each other up, and wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at one point I was on Interscope, and the next thing you know, Interscope is Geffen, A&M. It's like big, you know, 3-headed monster. And I'm on a label now with Beck and Sheryl Crow and everybody else. And then I became even less of a priority, right? Because, you know, I was really further down and they were signing people so many people, and then they would sign them and then not put the record out because it was cheaper not to put the record out then, even though they'd already spent like 500,000 or something on it. So
wow,
you can kind of see why they're in the shape they're in, the industry.
Because of the frivolous spending and just like
just throwing money around, and maybe not having the vision to see that it was all changing. Right. That, you know, I mean, it's kind of amazing now that we've seen vinyl make a comeback because, you know, when my first album came out, they had altogether stopped doing vinyl, which made me kind of sad. And just last year, my first album finally came out on vinyl, and it was so amazing. I hope they do that with my other ones.
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember it was like a big deal that like Kurt Cobain in the early 90s wanted his records on vinyl. And they're just like, what are you talking about? Such an, you know, who has records players anymore? It's like, it's beautiful that they've come back. Like, I love it. I love the medium. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's just, you can see the artwork better and it sounds better and more tangible. I love it. You know?
I feel like it's like slowed down my life in a great way. Like, cause you know, when you're listening to music on the fly, I'm at Trader Joe's, I got the headphones on, I'm just, you know, zoning out. But there's an experience with vinyl where I listen to the first side. Okay, first side's done. I get up, switch it over. And like, I take my time with a record and
exactly. People don't get to that experience when they're shuffling around, or, you know, with the record. Yeah, you have that moment where the first side is over and you can think about it, maybe go get a drink or something, come back, flip it over, or not. Sometimes you go through phases where I'm really into side B, you know, so all you're listening to is side B. And I just love it, you know, and I feel bad for people that, you know, I mean, when I was a kid growing up, there was less competing for my attention. Yeah. You know, I mean, I would buy a record and I'd sit there and read the lyric page and really get inside. So, and a lot of my favorite records I didn't like initially, right?
Right.
Because you love the artist, you kind of listen to it over and over, and it starts to take hold, and you start to see what it is about it that the artist loved, you know, or so. But yeah, I mean, it's just, and I still do that. I don't have a cell phone. I'm kind of like a, you know, a Luddite, I guess, and so, yeah, I mean.
Can you think of a record you didn't like at first and you're like, oh, now I love that record?
Oh, yeah, so many.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of my favorite Nilsson albums is one called Knilson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. I wrote that down because I feel like I hear a lot of that record in particular on you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, when I bought it, it was in a record store bargain bin, you know, because nobody bought that record. And I was looking through it, and I'd heard of Nilsson. I'm a big Nilsson fan now, but at the time I was like, I sort of vaguely remember Nilsson from my childhood, you know. So I picked it up, and I saw there was a song on the record called Lean on Me.
Right, yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, is that Lean on Me, that song I loved as a kid, you know? You know, because then now, you know, of course, now I'm a huge Bill Withers fan. But so I took it home, and the record just, and it wasn't that Lean on Me, it was a totally different song.
Totally.
And the record, it sounded like music you might hear in almost like an insane asylum or something. You know, all these weird strings, and I was like, I almost took it back. I wasn't into it. But again, you know, I put my own money down on it, so I kept going back to it. And then it just, one day, you know, it just took hold. And it's in my top 10 favorite albums of all time now. And of course, I went back and got all the other Nilsson records and all the Bill Withers records and everything.
Lean
there are
on
a lot
Me,
of albums like that, yeah.
Yeah, Lean on Me is such a crazy track. It has like all that delay, and it's like dun 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 dun. And
I don't know if it's like a dulcimer. I don't know what it is. It's always crazy. But that album is an album that I have to listen from start to finish, because it's, you know, it begins with you hear the boys choir, you know, and then on the last song, Perfect Day, again, it goes out with the boys choir, and it just really feels like a piece. And you know, the thing I didn't know at the time, but after becoming a huge Nilsson fan, the 3 albums that he made before Nilsson were a real mess, you know?
Right.
They're really sort of drunken party albums.
Pussycats,
Do It on Monday, Sandman, That Is All. They weren't great albums. It was Nilsson, and you could love Nilsson because of his sense of humor and that. And there'd be some good moments. but they always felt, they didn't feel as cohesive as like Son of Schmilson or The Point or those earlier great albums. And Knilson for me is right up there with Aerial Ballet and all the great albums where he's really focused. It's not all this toilet humor and all that kind of stuff that he got into. So I just love that record.
I think Aerial Ballet is obviously like the first one I think a lot of people get into. I love that. I still love that record, probably top. But like Pussycats has made its way back around for me. Yeah. Maybe because it is produced by John Lennon. Maybe because there is so much story around that record. I feel like Mucho Mango is such a good song. There's so many great tracks on there. But I love Old Dirt Road. Well, actually, Old Dirt Road is not on that album. It's on a later Flash Harry. But that's right.
Oh, I know. I was thinking of Many Rivers to Cross. You know.
Yes.
Which I think he blew his vocal cords out on. But yeah, I mean, and even Lennon, who made some not great albums. There's because it's John Lennon. You can get into it because his mind is so sharp and he always wore his heart on his sleeve, you know, like, whereas I love McCartney, but sometimes his records you can't get into because they're too, you know what I mean? Superficial or cute or something but his great records are great, you know, McCartney, but Lennon, even his bad records you can kind of get into because he's such a serious mind at work. Right. And just such a force of nature. Newton was like that too.
Yeah, John Lennon's one of those artists where I'm just such a big fan. Like when I was first like getting into his solo work after being a Beatles fan my whole life, like I was able to look past some of the songs and I'd show people songs and they'd be like, "This isn't very good." I'm like, I don't know. I fight for, you know, regard.
I really like Mind Games a lot. That album,
right?
No, I don't really hear people talk about it. And it's got some really funky things on it. Really, I love, you know, one called Tight Ass.
I was going to say Tight Ass.
And because you always love hearing Lennon. He was, you know, and then also when you hear Lennon's solo albums, you really get a sense of how important McCartney was in the Beatles. Because if Lennon was left to his own devices, he would have Strawberry Fields probably would have been like this rough kind of, because he was like a rock and roller. He didn't want to get too fussy, you know, because all his solo albums, you know, they straightforward, you know, I mean, but then, you know, Out of the Blues on that record, that's a nice one.
That's a great one.
You know, I love, obviously Mind Games is a masterpiece. The song itself is just like, that, you know, it's one of those songs only Lennon could have written it, you know.
Mind Games was like floating around for years too, because you'll hear these like old demos on YouTube of him like playing it like around, you know, I just wrote Mind Games and I wrote Imagine the same week. It's like, oh, that song was like
Make Love. It was called Make Love Not War, right? The original title for it. Thankfully, he changed it, you know. But and even right up till the end, even I was listening to Milk and Honey recently. Right. And Grow Old Along With Me is a gorgeous song. Too bad it didn't get a proper recording, you know. Right. But then there's the other one, like I Don't Want to Face It. It's really great.
Yeah, I love that one.
So, yeah. But that's the thing, when you form attachments to these people, you know, I'm a big Kinks fan, and some of their later albums aren't that good, but I love Ray so much that I'll give them the time and I'll try to find good elements in them, you know, good moments. So
every you know, every Wes Anderson has one great Kinks song I've never heard before. I'm like, oh yeah, he finds a great like deep cut. And some of those 80s, some of that 80s Kinks stuff is pretty wild too. Like when you, I don't know, there's that Christmas one,
Well, Christmas one, that's from the late 70s, actually.
That's late 70s.
Christmas. Right. But I love, like, I really love the album Give the People What They Want, and that's from 81, I think. Right. It's a really, I think it's their last great Kinks album. They made other things after that were like State of Confusion, had a few good things, and Word of Mouth even, you know. It seemed like at a certain point he lost the ability to write a really concise song. Right. You know, his songs were, before it would be like 2.5 minutes, would be like over 4 minutes, you know. Right. And he started kind of, you know, shouting more, or kind of that kind of barking, singing more than. Right. One thing I always loved about his voice was the warbly kind of thing, the melodic thing. But I still love Ray. Ray's like God to me, you know. And so I will always give his music the time of day, you know. So.
Did you listen to that new McCartney record?
No, because it didn't come to my my store here, my local store yet. And I know I could go online and hear it. The only song I did hear was, I think, the last song, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called, but I thought, wow, he's singing really good, because he's been struggling with his voice for some time now, right? I mean, he's not a spring chicken anymore. So
exactly.
And his songs have never been easy to sing, right? Like, he's such a great singer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was showing my girlfriend your new record, as we confirmed this interview, and I was like showing her your record, and she's like, this, and I just kind of said it too. I was like, this is the McCartney record I wanted, but it's not McCartney, it's Ron Sexsmith.
Well, some of the reviewers said that. It's like, it was my drummer's idea for me to make a record like this where I play all the instruments except for the drum. And that's what he said. We could do like an old McCartney,
McCartney
type
one.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, for me, a really interesting approach. And it was a lot of work, but it was fun, to play bass and other instruments that normally I wouldn't be allowed to play. But yeah, I mean, all those guys, Nilsson, I even have his new album too. It has a few good things on it.
I really liked The Lost and Found.
Yeah, and that song itself, I sometimes wish the production could have been better, or they could have, because sometimes I feel his voice is buried. But I love that one, Animal Farm. There's some really good songs on it.
So my buddy worked on that album, and he came on the podcast and talked about it. Like, it was such a crazy process of making that record, because it was just like taking these really warbly tapes and not just digitizing them, but like cleaning them up. He's like, we had to have a separate company do that. It's like real science work. And then they literally built a record around that, because I thought it was just like a done album, but they did the drums. Jim Keltner came and did the drums. Like, it was a real process.
I remember meeting Mark Hudson years ago. He came to Toronto for some reason, and I was talking to him. And I'd heard rumors that he was working on an album with Harry before he died. So obviously that's all I'm talking to him, asking him about, and he goes, oh yeah, it's going to come out. And this was like, 2000, early 2000s, and he was just going, oh yeah, I'm working on it. Oh, wait till you hear it. It's amazing and stuff. And then for the longest time, I thought, I guess it's never coming out, because it's just, and then I also thought, well, maybe it's so bad that maybe it shouldn't come out. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was pleasantly surprised, when I heard some really good songs, like A Woman, Oh Woman, and I love that one, UCLA,
UCLA,
it's great. The only ones I don't really like are the one about the baseball one. No, I like the Animal Farm.
Okay.
I love that song, actually. That's probably my favorite. I didn't like the baseball one, Dodger Blue or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't.
Dodger Blue.
Yeah, I just like not. And I didn't like the one about. I didn't really like the Rescue Boys song, really.
But which one's the Rescue Boys song?
It's kind of like a blues type thing.
That's right.
But I did like that really one, L'amour, whatever. That's a beautiful song.
Yeah. Yeah. What does a woman see in a man? I think
a Jimmy Webb song.
That's a Jimmy Webb song, and then.
Which is brilliant. I mean, that's and Nilsson always did covers too, so it just felt like totally appropriate that he would do a couple covers. Well, one anyway. Oh, he did a Yoko Ono song too. Yeah.
The Snow is Falling. Yeah, there's a lot of great songs on that record, man. Speaking of covers, like, Nilsson is unfortunately known for Everybody's Talking. That was a cover. You've had
Without You as a cover?
Without You is a Badfinger song.
Yeah.
You've had songs that have done really well as covers, like that Feist collaboration, or the Feist cover, I should say. And
we did both. We had a collaboration and a cover. We wrote Brandy Alexander, and she, which is inspired by Harry Nilsson, actually. Right. And then she covered Secret Heart. Yeah.
So after I heard that story, I went to a bar like the next night, and I was like, can I get a Brandy Alexander? And they're like, nobody orders that anymore. I'm like, I want to hear, I want one. I want to try it.
Yeah. It's like a chocolate milkshake. Great. It's so good.
I understood why they got so drunk. You don't even realize you're drinking so many of them. And you have
3 of them and you just start, it's a powerful drink. And
you start heckling the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just finished reading a biography on Harry, and I mean, the guy was a bit of a train wreck, you know, but just what a life, though, and just seemed he always had so much fun, right? Except maybe
Right.
at the end when his health wasn't so good. But
Right.
it's amazing. And all those guys like Warren Zevon is another one I really love, and their lives were just out of control, but they
Totally.
created amazing music.
Uh,
We were speaking about Wes Anderson a while ago. You see Bill Murray behind me?
right. Yeah.
Yeah, from Life Aquatic. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been loving it. I think Disney Plus just put on Isle of Dogs. I really enjoyed that one. That was like his latest one.
He's my favorite director, Wes Anderson. I just his soundtracks, just the imagery of all his movies and the act. It's just so
it's so thoughtful.
I don't think he's made a bad film. So.
Right. It's kind of crazy to go back and watch like Bottle Rocket.
That's such a great film, and
Yeah.
Rushmore is still my favorite.
Rushmore.
But Bottle Rocket's amazing. Just so much energy to it, and I love the Royal Tannenbaums. I rewatched that recently. Probably Gene Hackman's best role, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how did you stumble upon his movies?
Well, I went to see. I read a good review for Rushmore in my local. In Toronto, they had a magazine called Now Magazine. Like every city has one of these type of magazines.
Right.
And I really respected the film critic, and so he gave it like 4 N's or whatever it was.
Right.
And I didn't know anything about the film. I knew that Bill Murray was in it, and I thought I liked Bill Murray, and was not prepared for that film. Everything about that film, every scene is the dialogue, the sound, the songs they chose. And then I went out and bought the film on DVD. I just love that film. And then I heard he had an earlier film, so I went to see Bottle Rocket, And then I've gone to see every single one of his films since.
Nice.
The only one I wasn't, and it's a great film, but only one I didn't really like that much was the Darjeeling
Limited.
But again, I need to watch it again. But I love the what's that one about the camping, Moonrise Kingdom, and just brilliant movies.
I think I have a soft spot for Darjeeling Limited because that was like the first one I went to see in theaters.
Oh yeah, and again, lots of great Kinks songs in that film.
That's probably where I get my perception of him doing that. But I did want to go back to covers. Did you like when the Feist thing blew up, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, even before she did Secret Heart, Nick Lowe had done it. I mean, Rod Stewart did it too, I think, before Feist did. But Feist's version was probably my favorite one. And at the time, like I knew Leslie Feist, but when I first heard it, my manager brought it into the studio. I was working in London, and he said, here's a version of Secret Heart by a French artist named Feist, he said, right? And so I didn't put it together that it was Leslie Feist from Canada. And so I'm listening to it and I go, wow, it's amazing. She doesn't have there's no accents or anything. I couldn't hear it. And it was actually Leslie. I ran into Leslie at South by Southwest about a year later. And then I put it together and I was like, that was you? Oh my God, and she was almost sort of apologizing for her version. She thought it was a bit too coy or something, right? But I don't know. I thought it had a cool Europop kind of thing going on. And
totally.
So, yeah, but when you're a songwriter, that's the thing you kind of hope will happen is people will do your songs.
Yeah. Yeah, and people doing your songs, and also the mysterious world for any songwriter is selling your songs. Like, how do you even get into that world? I guess that's the publishing side of it. Like,
yeah, I don't get into that. And I think about 98% of the songs that have been covered were covered naturally. They weren't covered because someone pushed it on someone, Right. They just heard a song on a record of mine and did it. Like, and even over the years, I would send Michael Bublé songs.
Right.
He would never do them, And then one day he does Whatever It Takes.
Yeah.
Which wasn't even a song that I sent him, It was just that he heard it on the radio. Same thing with Emmylou Harris. I would write a song. I go, oh, I bet Emmylou might like this one. And, again, there was nothing. And then eventually she did Hard Bargain because I think the producer she was working for suggested it.
Right.
So, yeah, they just take on a life of their own. My Christmas song is my most covered song, though, maybe This Christmas. Every year it gets covered about 100 times by people all over the world.
Yeah.
And that gives me probably the most pride, because I'm a huge fan of Bing Crosby, you know, and I always thought it'd be great. And not that he's just a Christmas guy, because I love all his music, but you know, he's known as kind of Mr. Christmas or whatever. But I always thought, wouldn't it be great to write a Christmas song that would get covered every year, and you know, so
totally,
yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, I absolutely like. I know Johnny Mathis has a lot of different types of music, but I always listen to his Christmas stuff. And my grandmother was such a big fan of Johnny Mathis, Bing Crosby, like that whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you always point that out, because I always in my interviews I always tell people, oh yeah, Johnny Mathis, and they're like, you listen to Johnny Mathis? Like, yeah, I saw him like a few years ago, and his voice is perfect still. It's insane.
Yeah, I bought his record a couple years ago. Well, maybe 7 years ago. We put out a record of it was like a country album or something, right? And I bought that, and he sounded great. I thought, and I not that I thought he wouldn't sound great, because he's one of those guys. He looks like he takes care of himself. You know, he's very well preserved.
It's also that generation of like singers who like know how to maintain their voice.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't do that enough. And I think now as I'm getting to my 30s, I do. Do you do anything before a set to like warm up your voice?
It's a little bit. I mean, I know nothing. It usually takes me a couple songs on stage to kind of warm up.
Yeah.
But you know, I think, knock on wood, I mean, I feel like I'm a way better singer now than when I started.
Yeah, your voice sounds great.
More control over it. Mm-hmm. But I know I'm getting old, and at some point I'll probably have to lower the keys or this and that. It seems to happen to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping I can sing as good for as long as possible. Because you know, I one of my biggest heroes is Gordon Lightfoot. Mm-hmm. And his voice, you know, I mean, he's 82 now, you know, and I go see him, well, when I was, you know, when you could go to a concert. Right. And he was struggling, you know, like he had sort of emphysema. There was a lot of, it just sounded very whispery. There wasn't a lot of mid-range.
Yeah.
And it was sad, because you think of, how much I loved his voice, and I still love going to see him. I love being in the room with him.
Right.
And it's happened with a lot of singers. I was a big fan of Ian Gillan from Deep Purple, you know, like he had that real throaty, really great hard rock voice. And again, it's weird with him, because all the screamy stuff is still there, but it's that mid-range. Probably the section of his voice that he used the most is kind of
worn,
shot, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I get why people, you know, keep going, because they just love being on stage, and people, you know, even though they're seeing maybe someone not at their height or whatever, they still like, it's still like when Gordon Lightfoot's not there, when he's gone, there's, you know, that's it. There's no one can replace that. So, and I try to respect wherever anybody's at in their career with their voice or with their whatever they're singing. You know, Dylan's writing different songs now than he used to, you know, like, and you just sort of go with it. It's interesting to see how people evolve, you know, and how they devolve too, you know. So
yeah, there's a certain point where I'm just happy that, you know, someone like Paul McCartney is still here with us.
Oh my God, it's no like one, a blessing. None of the other Beatles could do what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like John Lennon wouldn't go on tour and play 3 hours of note for note Beatles songs. You know what I mean? And George certainly wouldn't do that.
No.
I mean, I know he did a couple of little tours, but McCartney is like the biggest Beatle fan in the world. He's like the ambassador.
Yes.
And because he took care of himself, and up until recently he was singing still very good. You know, and I still, like, I saw him a couple years ago and he was fine, you know. But he's the only Beatle. Once he's gone, it's like nobody can do that. Nobody can play 3 hours of amazing hits like that.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been fortunate and lucky enough to see him twice, and each time it's just like mind blowing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I do want to get back to your new record. So you played most of the instruments yourself. This is the first time you've done that, and how was that?
I played everything except drums. You know, Don Kerr, my drummer, produced it. I think initially he wanted me to play drums too, but I was like, it's just, you know, it's a lot harder than it looks. And I thought maybe I could do it by hand, like where I play the bass drum with my hand and snare and then overdub.
Right.
But then I ultimately thought, you know, why don't, you know, I'll just play to you. So he came to my house here in Stratford, and we turned the whole house into a studio where this room over here you can't see, but it's my piano room. So I was in there singing at the piano, and he was up in this other room with the mixing board playing drums with wires everywhere.
Wow.
And we spent the first day, it was a really long session. We started, about 1 PM and went till 2 AM, just piano, voice, and drums.
Wow.
We managed to record all the songs though, just live. The next day, I spent about 3 or 4 hours just doing bass, which was really fun because all the hard parts, were done.
Right.
And then I spent a few hours just re-singing every song 2 or 3 times, just so I had a safety in case one of my vocals sucked or something.
Right.
And then the rest of it we did in Toronto, and it was funny because my wife bought me this real tacky keyboard, this Casio, with 100 sounds, whatever, harpsichords and all this kind of stuff.
Totally.
And so I was at home working at all these parts, for this song and that song. It was really fun because I was just new to this town of Stratford. I didn't know anybody, so I spent a lot of time by myself. So I took this tacky keyboard to Toronto and I wasn't intending on using it. I just wanted to show him my parts, and because he had a MIDI keyboard that he thought would get more authentic sound, but the Casio blew everything away. Right. Everything he heard, like there's even tacky things like there's a banjo sound on it, that he just sounded like a banjo from from a parallel universe or something. Yeah. And so I couldn't believe how useful this thing was, and we used it on everything. Some of the songs, like with the banjo, I actually got a real banjo and doubled it on a real banjo. But, and then I brought in electric guitar one day, and my guitar player in my band lent me all his pedals. I've never used a pedal in my life, so I'm using fuzz and everything. So I was like a kid in a candy store.
Right.
And it just took so long because, I would do the keyboards, and then maybe 2 months later, I was back in Toronto doing guitar, and I just couldn't wait to be finished.
And were you doing it on a computer, or were we doing this to tape? Do you have a tape machine at home, or?
No, it was all, I guess, Pro Tools. Like my drummer has a studio in his basement.
Cool.
Like, which he brought his whole studio to my house actually, and it all fit in his station wagon.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait, for him to leave because the whole house was upside down, and but yeah, we got it done, and I was pretty impressed at how my piano room's got high ceilings, so it got a good sound. I just have an upright, and I just had it tuned the day before he arrived, and so it sounded really good. I need to get it tuned again, but yeah. So I mean, it was his idea to work this way, and I don't think I would ever do it again like that, but it was fun to do it once.
Yeah. So it sounds like it was pretty much self-produced. Like, did you like doing that? Like, or?
Yeah. I mean, I did kind of, I gave him the producer credit.
Right.
But because that sort of, well, it means more to him than me anyway.
Right.
And he, not that he didn't produce it, but all the parts I came up with, all my own
arrangements,
Yeah. But it was his idea to do the record like that.
Cool.
And he also had a lot of great ideas too, about just harmonies and things like that. So it was a total collaborative effort. But yeah, I think the next record I would love to get back in a studio with a different producer,
right?
If possible.
Do you know who Jeff Tweedy is?
Oh yeah, Wilco. Yeah.
I feel like that. I want to hear a Jeff Tweedy, Ron Sexsmith record. That's what I want to hear.
I would love that. I don't know if he would love that or how interested he would be. The last time I saw him, I toured with Wilco before, and I hung out with his whole band, but I hardly ever saw Jeff the whole tour because he'd be in his trailer or something. Recently, I went to see Nick Lowe open for Wilco in Toronto. And so I was in Nick's dressing room, and I guess Jeff heard that I was backstage, so he came into the dressing room and said hi, and it was really nice to see him because I really don't, I know the other guys more than I know Jeff,
Right.
And at the time he'd just done a record for Mavis Staples.
Right.
So I said, hey, and in fact I just opened for Mavis Staples not that long before over in England, and so so that's what we talked about, because I thought that was an unusual pairing, those two,
Yeah.
you don't really think of gospel when you think of Jeff Tweedy,
Totally.
But no, I mean, I would love that. There's a guy in Nashville who played bass on my early records named Brad Jones, who's also a really good producer. And I thought might be nice to hang out with him. Because for me, record is just hanging out with somebody,
Yeah,
just,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how far are you along into the next project? Are all the songs already written? Where are you at mentally?
Yeah, the songs are finished. I'm actually demoing them, just guitar and voice, this weekend. Just in case I get COVID and die or something. I just want to get them down on tape.
The lost and found Ron Sexsmith record.
Yeah, I just want to record them just so I have them. But then I'll probably demo them a few more times. But so I'm looking forward to getting. But I have 10 songs, and I'm trying not to write any more than 10. Because all my albums are like 12 or 14 songs. So I'm ready to record whenever all this goes away.
Do you typically write in bulk and then trim down, or are you writing to a record?
Yeah, I tend to write in batches of songs. Like, you'll find yourself in the middle of like 5 or 6 songs, and you can kind of see a record taking shape. And then there's usually a couple that come in late, right before you record or something.
Those are always the favorite ones.
Yeah. Or sometimes you've got a whole bunch of songs and you're thinking, well, these are good songs, but I don't hear anything that's like maybe a single or something. Or not that I've had a lot of luck with singles, but I had an album called Time Being where I had all the songs written, but again, I felt like they're all these songs about death, and I don't really. So I wrote this song called All in Good Time, and that was what I felt the record needed, and it just came in under the gun, and got it on the record, and it was the single, and didn't set the charts on fire, but it did okay. So that happens too, but these songs are really compact 10 that I think really belong together on a record,
right?
And so I'm looking forward to recording them, and then listening to when you listen to the demos, that's when you hear where they need work, and that key is wrong, or I got to get to the bridge faster, all that kind of stuff. So
that's always my favorite process: is the editing, is the trimming down, trimming the fat off these songs and making them real nice and concise. Yeah, because sometimes I feel people don't put the work in.
Yeah, I'll hear a song that has good ideas, but I'll be like, really? Are you going to leave it like that? Like, And sometimes songwriters who I really admire do that, and it really bothers me. Where there's a lyric like, "You seriously? You could do better than that," or something. And I'm probably guilty of it too. But I really do put the work in. I pull my hair out over it. The songs, I want them to be tight. I want the lyrics to make sense.
Right.
I want the melody to fit with the lyric. I want the second verse to sing as nice as the first verse does, or all that kind of stuff. And that's important to me. And I think all my heroes did that, whether they just did it naturally or if they pulled their hair out over it too. So,
do you think you focus more on the verse melody versus, like, for me, I feel like I need the verses to feel good, and then the chorus will come along.
Yeah. Well, for the longest time, I didn't know how to write a chorus. So all my songs were mostly these melodic verses that had a refrain. And it wasn't until I was on tour with Coldplay where I was watching them one night, and every one of their songs had this chorus that would unfold, and the whole audience would start singing it. And then it occurred to me, like, wow, I couldn't think of one song of mine that had a chorus.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And if you go back to my earlier albums, you won't find a chorus anywhere. And so around when I started writing there might have been a few on Cobblestone Runway, but while I'm touring with Coldplay on Retriever, I started writing songs like Not About to Lose, Whatever It Takes, all these songs that had the bona fide choruses. And that's, I sort of credit them with that in a way. In fact, one time I was playing Not About to Lose in my dressing room, writing it, and Chris Martin happened to be walking by, and he stuck his head in, and he's like, what's that you're playing? I go, oh, it's a new song I'm working on. He said, sounds like a hit. And then he walked on down the
There you go.
hall. Yeah, and I was like, it felt so good, because obviously at this point they'd had quite a few hits, and it was a single, and it did get into the top 20 or whatever in Canada. So, so choruses, but but I want the chorus to be just as strong as the verse, and the same with the bridge. I want that I don't want it just to be what do you call it, a bridge. Sometimes I feel a bridge is just put there for a dumb reason, or we need a bridge. Well, you don't always need a bridge.
Right.
I want the bridge to feel like it had to be there, not some gratuitous bridge or something.
Right.
So because I love songs like, Cole Porter, every time we say goodbye. It's just 2 verses. Mm-hmm. It says everything you want to say in those 2 verses. There's no big chorus. There's nothing else. And I don't know. That's the stuff I nerd out on. I love the structure of songs.
Absolutely. I always find myself listening to the Dinah Washington version of that song.
Oh, wow. I don't know. Really I mostly know Ella's version and Chet Baker's version.
Yeah, she has a big crescendo at the end. It's awesome. It's so good. I saw an interview, I guess in the Hermitage sessions. Yeah. You said you wrote, "Oh no, you don't want to hear it now" in 30 minutes. Like, what was that process? Is it I got that melody first, or did you have the chords first? What's your process?
I had everything first. It was all kind of like this big sort of purge or something. Yeah. Like God Loves Everyone was like that too. I wrote everything, but it was because I was a little upset. I had I was actually, before I knew what I was going to do, I was looking for a producer to work with. Mm-hmm. So I was reaching out to all these people, Jeff Lynne and this and that,
right,
and not getting anywhere, and I tried to reach out with Bob Rock, who did my most successful album, which is Long Player Late Bloomer. Yeah. And Bob and I had a falling out. For, I don't know, he's very sensitive, Bob,
right.
He was a little upset that I did my follow-up album with Mitchell Froom. And anyway, it was just, right. I didn't know that was something people might get upset about or anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought, like, as an olive branch, I would reach out to him and say, hey, I have these new songs. I don't know if you're interested. And because I really did like working with him.
Right.
And also my label, especially in the UK, was hoping I would do another album with Bob because that album did so well. But I got just completely shut down, right? He didn't want to hear he didn't want to know anything about it.
Right, right.
And so I got right away, as I had the idea, you don't want to hear it. And, I wrote the whole thing, melody and everything, just in maybe 30 minutes is exaggerating, but definitely within an hour or so. And I had this song, and it was kind of like what I said before with Time Being, because I had all the other songs already written, but I didn't really have anything that sounded like a single. And this, I felt, because I thought it was really catchy. It felt like it had a kind of Chai Lights type thing.
Yeah, with the fuzz guitar.
That came in with the production. When I wrote it, it was more like that sort of soul thing, or almost like Elton John, Little Genie, or whatever.
Right, right.
But it felt like it's just what this album needs, is a song like this. And also, I felt better from writing it. Just I got it off my chest, because I wrote it with the best intentions, and it was sort of, I wasn't angry really when I wrote it. I was just sort of, I was trying to make amends in a way, or try to reach out, and I just, so, and I don't know if he ever heard the song or ever, I don't, it doesn't really matter, but I got a song out of it, and it's getting quite a lot of, initially when it came out, it was getting quite a lot of airplay. So anyway, I'm just glad, these things happen for a reason,
Then that makes the line "music is like an olive branch" make a lot more sense to me now. Yeah, there was a few, I can't remember the lyrics right now, but right.
Yeah, I like that one, don't want to be a thorn in your side, or something like this.
Right.
There was a lot of fun writing, really fun recording it, actually, doing the fuzz guitar and doing all the do's. Again, trying to do like
Best highlights.
Have you seen her?
Have you seen her? Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's what I was trying to do. It was crossed between Have You Seen Her and Oh Girl by the Child.
I love them. They're so good. And what process does the lyrics, I guess you kind of say all came together, but typically do the lyrics come at the end, or are you sitting there writing and then writing the lyrics down at the same time? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's usually a bit of both, you've got, every song's different, like that song, I say all the lyrics pretty much came at once. There's songs, where maybe I have two verses and no melody.
Right.
Or, maybe all I have is one phrase, like with a melody, so lyrics are the hardest part for me. But generally what happens is you get, like when I started writing Glow in the Dark Stars, all I had was glow in the dark stars,
right.
Nothing else, and I just come do, but I knew that already what I had with just the melody and Glow in the Dark Stars, that eventually it was going to be a song and I was going to find the words and I was going to this and that. And so sure enough, and then I didn't know what the verses should be in that song. That was a tough one to write, actually.
Yeah.
Because the verses is almost like a different kind of music than the chorus. So, but yeah, so lyrics, I just try to be patient. It's always great when you get a bunch of lyrics off at the top, like your verse that sings well and a chorus. And because then you can, I find it's helpful when you're trying to write a second verse if you stick closely to the internal rhyming scheme of the first verse, so it sings well, try to use the same amount of syllables, or try to, Life would do that all the time with his songs, Right. So there's, once you get this, whatever it is, you get this inspiration, lyric, melody, and you only get so much, and whatever
right.
that is, that's the inspiration, and the rest is up to you as a craftsman to take that little bit and flesh it out. And again, that could take, I think when I started writing these songs, it was probably about 7 months, I think, where I was working on a whole bunch, and some would get finished earlier, some would be tagging along, but then ultimately what happens is they all start to come together around the same time. And all of a sudden, oh, there's my record,
Right.
And then you start demoing them. And I think I demoed these songs about 3 times before we recorded them. So.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. We okay, so we could start. We could. Thank you so much for your time. We could start wrapping this up. I asked the internet some questions, and someone just wanted a Nick Lowe anecdote. Do you have any story you can tell about Nick Lowe?
Well, yeah, one amazing story, and this will sort of tie in with Harry Nilsson, is, Nick was in a band called Brinsley Schwartz a long time ago in London. And he had told me that he was feeling it in the air. There was a change in the air. The old kind of rock and rollers were going to be edged out by this new type of music that was coming in.
Right.
Whether, the punk thing or whatever. But he was feeling it, but he hadn't, and he was starting to write a song about that sort of thing. And so he was at a bar, and I think he was probably doing a bunch of different things and drinking and this and that.
Right.
And he ran into one of the guys from the band America, the blonde guy, what's his name? With the
I don't know his name.
But anyway, and because they lived in England for some reason, America. I don't know what they were doing over there. But he was a fan of Brinsley Schwartz. And so he said to Nick, hey, I'm going to this party at Harry Nilsson's flat in Mayfair. Do you want to tag along? And, at that point, I think Nick was probably up for anything. Yeah, and I'll tag along. So he goes there. And this is I can't even imagine this, but they go into Nilsson's flat, and there's Nilsson, Keith Moon, Ringo Starr, Kit Lambert, all sitting around a kitchen table, drinks and cocaine and all these other things around there. And they're having a sort of guitar pull, passing the guitar, singing songs, and nobody knows who Nick Lowe is. He's just sitting there. He's young. But he's got this song, and he's a bit, heightened by whatever drugs he was on. And he's dying to play this new song that he wrote. And, but the guitar never comes to him. It keeps going past him and something else. And so he told me at one point he got mad, and he just grabbed the guitar out of somebody's hand and said, I'm going to play this song. But because of his state of mind, he wasn't able to, he fumbled with it, he made mistakes, and he finally played it. And he said it was kind of like a tumbleweed, like nobody said anything. They just sort of looked at him. But he said that he got up and went over to Harry Nilsson and said something like, you guys have had your day. It's all changing now, or something like this, and kind of stormed out. Which years later he regretted it, because he was in LA once and he saw Nilsson at a bar at the Roosevelt Hotel, and he wanted to go over to him and say, you probably don't remember this, but I met you and blah, blah, blah. And he was going to apologize because he was a fan of Nilsson.
Mm-hmm.
But the next time he looked, Harry had left, and then he died not long after. So, but it was just, I just can't even imagine that scene, right?
Yeah.
It's just, because that was like Party Central for a while at Nilsson's flat,
That's right. Totally. Oh, that's amazing. And he told you that story while you guys were on tour? Or?
Yeah, we had a lot of long drives, so there were a lot of stories that he had, and I don't remember them all, but he was just really, really just fun to be with. And we have, similar, even though we're old, different ages and that, we have very similar influences, and, we're both big fans of like Sam Cooke and all that kind of stuff, and the 50s music. So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from him, and we're still in touch. We're still good friends.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, okay, to wrap it up, I'll just say, what's the best way for people to support Ron Sexsmith right now?
I really don't know. I mean, I just like people hearing the music. If they can order it online or pay however people pay for music, or
where can we buy the vinyl?
Can you get it from my website? I'm asking my wife. Yeah, I think there's a link on my website.
Okay.
You go to Warner Canada or Cooking Vinyl, you can order it.
Which I think goes to Amazon.
Yeah, and it goes to Amazon. So I mean, it all trickles. Great. It trickles down to me somehow, But I'm just, I'm on this YouTube. All my music's out there.
Right.
I mean, whoever people get their music, they can get mine the same way. So
yeah, well, I'm personally done listening to it on Spotify. I'm gonna buy the record so I can listen to it at home. Absolutely love it. And thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, great chatting with you. Take care.
You too. Have a good day.
All right, see you now. Bye.